It's 12:41 in the morning. Are you ready for some porn? I think it's time for some more porn. It's late at night, let's have some real porn. Women's porn. Yay, the wordy stuff. Lots of words. I gotta warm up. A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U. Alright, I'm warmed up now. Okay. His desire for her surged and awakened in him a sleeping brutality. He wanted to hurt her, driven by an angered passion he did not fully understand. He reached out, took her arm, and roughly jerked her to him. His eyes holding her, he raised his hands, curled long fingers into the torn opening of her buckskin shirt. He ripped it apart and shoved it from her shoulders. Scratch, its deadly black eyes on her rain-wet bare breasts. Breasts, they're bare. He spoke at last. If a savage is to use you, I'll be that savage. His mouth came forcefully down upon hers. His sharp teeth nipped at her soft bottom lip. Then released it. Immediately, he deepened the kiss. His passion-hardened lips brooded in their... Let me read again. His passion-hardened lips brutal in their invasion for her trembling mouth. He kissed her with fierce aggression. His hunger for her heightened by a raw need to punish her for scarring him. Oh no, scar. Ah. Marte put up no fight, grateful to be alive. Relieved it was his arms she was in. His lean, hard body she was pressed intimately... It's that hard word. Intimately against. She willingly surrendered, kissing him back with a fervor that rivaled his. The long, demanding kiss was exactly what she needed, and she sighed with pleasure as the tongue pleasured her. Tongue penetrated deeply. Oh. Eagerly she touched her tongue with his and felt him shudder against her. Abruptly, Night Sun raised his dark head. The expression in his eyes was a mixture of heat and cold, of lust and hate, of harshness and helplessness. A muscle jumping fiercely in his dark jaw, his hands came up to clasp and lift the soft, bare breast. His warm palm enclosed the nipple as his lips went to the side of Marte's throat. She felt his sharp teeth graze the sensitive spot just below her ear. The ear. And her pulse quickened as he hastily, hungrily kissed a molten path to her breasts. Her breasts. His hot, open mouth swiftly enclosed a peeking nipple, and he slipped to his knees before her. He was not gentle. His arms went around her. His hands possessively gripped her bare back, pulling her to him. He held her tightly, securely, while he sucked so vigorously at her breast. Marte winced from the pain, pleasure. Her breath coming in short little flutters. She put her hands into his dark wet hair. Anxiously she gripped the silky locks, pulling frantically, urging him closer, even as she arched her back and leaned to him, enthralled by the exquisite enjoyment of his fiercely tugging lips and raking teeth. Making a strange little sound in the back of her throat. She watched his gleaming wet lips release her rapidly pinking breast and move to the other one. Surprised that such incredible joy could come from his lips enclosing her nipple, she gasped when his mouth opened wider to draw even more of her breast inside. To that too, as her wet quivering breast, that too, brought added pleasure, as she watched dazed and delight, as her wet quivering breast seemed to disappear into his questing mouth as greedily he sucked, devouring her, thrilling her. The first small hailstones hissed outside on the canyon floor as Night Sun knelt there under the rock overhang, holding Marte against him, his mouth deserting her breast to slide hotly down over her narrow ribcage. When his lips touched the wet buckskin of her torn skirt, he lifted his head, feeling himself growing painfully hard beneath his tight buckskin pants. He was resolved to have her in any way, and every way he chose. Yes, he chose. To teach her a lesson she would never forget, to ignore her pleas for gentleness and patience. So he ripped the soggy, tattered buckskin skirt from her just as a fierce gust of wind slammed into the scooped-out enclosure, almost knocking Marte from her feet with one steadying hand. He held her up. When the big black whickered loudly and nudged the Night Sun's shoulder, and fierce lightning skittered within feet of them, and the winds and the rains grew more angry and intense. Night Sun, as tumultuous and as violent as a worsening tempest, stripped Marte naked. Naked. Not naked. Yes, naked. He sat back on his heels then, anticipating her fear, expecting the tears and the begging, but Marte defied him. Proudly she stood there, bare and wet and beautiful, her emerald eyes shining with unashamed desire. Her hands outstretched to him, beckoning him to take what he unwrapped. Watching her intently, as though she were some strange erotic apparition that would surely vanish in the mist, Night Sun shuddered. Groaned and reached out for her, his hands roughly encircling her narrow waist. Marte, unafraid, looked steadily into his dark eyes, love and desire shining clearly in her own. That open, inviting look, the brazen offering of her pale, beautiful body in sweet surrender, angered Night Sun. More determined than ever to shock her, he swiftly pulled her down, positioned her on her back atop the blanket, and stretched out beside her. a firm hand pressing her bare shoulder down to the blanket. He brought the long leg over her knees to hold her down, his mouth lower to hers. Then, and he kissed her forcefully, deeply, deeply. His open lips twisting, slanting on hers. Marte felt the oppressive rub of his buckskins against her bare flesh, and his chest pressed heavily on hers, and his knee moved between her legs to nudge them apart. Apart. After just one deep, intrusive kiss, his lips left her and immediately began moving aggressively down over her bare, tingling body. Clutching at his shoulders, Marte murmured his name breathlessly and whispered, "Darling, take off your clothes. Your buckskins are scratching me." He gave no answer. His eyes closed, his strong, possessive hands sweeping over her. He continued to kiss her naked flesh, hungrily, feasting on her as though he would never get his fill. His fill. When his hot, open lips reached her bare belly, Marte shuddered, excited with pleasure. Nightsun turned his head from side to side, brushing his lips, his teeth, his tongue on her quivering flesh. His long, silky hair, damp from the rains, fell around his dark, moving face to tickle and excite her. Her hands clutching at the spread blanket, Marte lay there completely naked, while Nightsun, fully clothed, pressed plucking kisses to her flat stomach as the high plains hailstorm raged around them. While his lips and tongue played passionately over her sensitive skin, Marte inhaled deeply the rain-freshened air and smiled foolishly. Wondering, she turned her head and saw, as if in a dream, great balls of frozen ice fall from the stormy sky into the swirling water surging through the canyons. Yes, great balls of frozen ice. I'd never heard of that before. The violent winds continued to howl. The rains became torrential. The sky was dark as midnight. The black stallion and the swirl male, standing not 6 feet away, flickered with nervous excitement, their wild eyes. Horses? There's horses here. The hell do horses have anything to do with anything at all? Unbothered by any of it, Marte felt absolutely no fear. She was not afraid of the late summer storm, nor was she afraid of the dark, handsome man furiously kissing her bare belly. Bare belly. She didn't understand him. She'd never been able to fully penetrate the mystery that was Nightsun. But she loved him with all her heart and soul. She was his, would always be his, and he could love her in any way he wanted. Oh, well, that's in the part 1. It's rather long, so I'll just say, this is in the part 1. You'll see the other video real shortly. Thank you. Stay tuned to Manga Vision. Goodbye. Good night. Oh, I see in a few seconds. However long it takes you to, go from one to the other.